Hi there, welcome to an episode of How Do I Explain This? And today's episode is about and releasing what doesn't serve anymore. And I need to stop saying and. Starting new chapters are very interesting because you never really know when it starts. I think for me, I recognize when I'm in a new chapter when everything in my old life has officially crumbled and I am sitting there looking at the wreckage and smiling. It's weird. I find myself, and again, it's probably because I'm Scorpio and I have a Scorpio stellium, but death and rebirth is the cornerstone for how I know that I am about to level up pretty big in my life. However, it does not make the process of releasing any easier. I think it makes it easier to identify it. Like I can see it now where I'm like, this cycle, this pattern, this belief, no good. Like I can see all that bad. It's not bad, oops. Let me reframe that. I can see why it needs to go. And I know that it's going to go whether or not I am ready. And that's something that I had to cement in my mind because I always felt that if I can control or manipulate or somewhat steer the outcome of the thing that I'm avoiding addressing, then it will be either a easier process of releasing or I get to avoid it. It's never the second one. It is never the second one. I wish it was the second one. I don't wish, actually. I don't wish that at all. However, it makes life a little bit more like like I feel like I'm able to be a little bit more delusional, but delusion doesn't allow space for growth, and I choose to no longer turn a blind eye to these patterns and stories and habits that I know I need to release. I no longer turn a blind eye to the emotional turmoil that I may be experiencing at that time and trying to make sense of it and not being too scared to go into the unknown, into the lovely void, and to try to make sense of why I'm feeling that way. It's never something that feels good. I think, does it get easier as time goes on and I'm more familiar with my body and I'm more familiar with my cues and, my triggers? Sure. However, sometimes it just feels like, damn, I just learned this lesson, so why am I learning it again? Like, it is a little disheartening. I hate sirens. Like, welcome to fucking New York. But anyways, it does sometimes feel disheartening because you think I've already kind of worked through this, but yet it's showing up in my life again. And a lot of times when I find myself going down that thought loop or experiencing kind of a repeated cycle showing back up to me, I consider it that there's like 5% left of this cycle that I need to make sense of. And when I kind of have that awareness register in my brain, when I'm able to kind of not intellectualize, but I'm able to find my own understanding to kind of the reason as to, I kind of come and find, and what I end up doing is that I'm able to have more peace and acceptance with that cycle, because every time it pops up, to me, it does not mean that I have failed. I think back then, when I was more so intellectualizing my feelings, I felt that, I felt I had to redo the whole healing process to understand, kind of retrace my steps and understand where I fucked up because I love to blame myself. I used to love to blame myself and no longer do. What I came to realize is that I had this idea of kind of black and white thinking when it came to healing, that once I bring it into my awareness and I work to address it, therefore it should be gone, right? That cause and effect. It's either I have the problem or I don't, and I've healed through it. But I kind of realized that that's wrong. Not wrong, but unhelpful, because our whole life and our life experience, to me, is constantly navigating this emotional wave that we kind of are susceptible to, because life is not constant. The only thing that is constant is change. And I think, what is that scientific is that? I think that's I think that's a law. Newton? Maybe. I should know this. I'm a science major. I was a science major. But I think it's very important to recognize this black and white thinking, because the moment you recognize it, it feels like you're not starting over from zero. You are able to understand and give yourself kind of that grace and acceptance that you've done 95% of the work. And it's only this last 5% that is calling your awareness and calling for your attention. And what I usually find is that 5% is what we have been desperately avoiding. Like, I can use an example where I'm not going to use an example. So the way I would describe like that 5% is our attachment to the thing, to the place, to the person, and kind of this feeling that if we were to release it, then we would truly not know what's on the other side. So black and white thinking kind of allows us to have this like frame of mind that focuses on protecting ourselves from the unknown, because either I healed from it or not is kind of saying that I have to complete this one task, and therefore I know that once I complete it, I am good to go and I am able to move on, right? It's a focus of moving on, whereas to me, release is not a moving on, it's more of a leveling up, right? I ask myself, like, in this level up, what was the thing or the person or place or attachment in general that I had to release in that 5%? And what was the stories attached to it? What were the beliefs attached to it? How was I navigating through kind of that space? And how has that limited me in kind of pursuing the things that I want to pursue? And so I saw it more as an up level, because now that I have finally ripped the Band-Aid off and I've been able to, I don't know, put alcohol on it and a Band-Aid and go see a doctor about it just to make sure I didn't get an infection, then I'm able to step into my imagination. I'm able to really step into my imagination. And I think that is the key unlock for me when I've had to kind of understand how to push through that 5%. Because that 5% may take longer than the 95% of what you've had to go through, because we don't realize how deeply attached we are to so many things in our life and how intertwined we are to one another. And so maybe that 5% that you are desperately trying to address may be hindered by the people in your life, maybe are, limitations that they constantly make aware to you, and, the language they use to describe you. And sometimes I really, really call attention to the way someone describes me, because how I am portrayed by you is kind of how I will then take that on as kind of perceiving my place in the world. So if you doubt me, you place more doubts on myself. I'm like, oh, because you are someone who's close to me in my life, I do value people's opinion, and I'm very open. to hearing feedback and suggestions. That's a really hard word. And feedback, and also just being able to work with people, right? And when I then turn into my imagination to kind of override the fear of the unknown, I'm also able to just take inventory of how people speak about me or how I speak about the things that I am doing, because if I am imagining this life that I am up leveling to, why would I keep speaking about myself or allowing others to speak about me in a way that does not live up to that upper level that I am trying to achieve? So why would I surround myself with people who doubt me if I'm trying to imagine and create a life of, my dreams and my joys and my aspirations and goals, if they are seeing me as something less than, or they are seeing me as that same person who's really just trying to get through. And something that I do in my imagination is not just dream up how I want this up level to be and what blessings I want to bring into my world. I also focus on how I want to show up and be perceived in the world. How do I embody the energy of the person who has all these things, right? You hear that all the time, right? You hear it in TikToks and Instagrams about manifestation, blah, blah, blah. You have to be the person you want to be in order to get the things you want. And sadly, I'm here to report that that's accurate. The TikTok girlies were onto something. But the way that I would reframe that, because I think that it's a little misleading and it simplifies the process, and it's not. It may be for other people. However, I find the process exploratory, and let me explain why. We never really know what we want until we kind of experience what we don't want. And when we experience what we don't want, then we kind of put ourselves out there to figure out what it is we want. And every time I think about what I want to do in this chapter of my life or how I want to up level, I always have to ask myself, what in my current world do I want this up level, and how do I want that to look? So something I would ask myself is, outside of the tangible things that I am looking to call in, whether that's my own apartment or money or, more friendships and romance, I ask myself, what can I do to make myself feel like the person that has it all? And I think about it more so around the sets of beliefs and the way this person carries themselves in this new chapter. And I can give you kind of an example of how I am seeing this in terms of my own new chapter and what it is that I'm calling in, and the way that I kind of sit back and imagine what this next up level looks like. I focus on the day-to-day activities that I do, and not just the actual task or the thing, but more so, the energy that I am bringing into the tasks that I'm doing. How do I want to feel throughout the day, and what are those things that anchor me in the feeling? And so I always say that in my up levels, I have to experiment. I have to explore what feels good to me. I have to figure out my flow. And for example, something that shocked me is the fact that I have always been a morning person. I love the 5 a.m. wake ups, no one's bothering me, and it makes me feel really close to God and or universe or whoever you believe in. And what I've come to realize is, while I do love the 5 a.m. wake ups, they were brought into my life. I discovered kind of this 5 a.m. wake up because of the book 5 a.m. Wake Up Club right there. And in this book, I kind of had this huge aha moment because I've always been a morning person. I had always had like a 9 p.m. bedtime for that because I sleep a lot and I need a lot of sleep. But what I recognized when I was kind of feeling what this new chapter was going to be for me and understanding my bodily responses to this 5 a.m. wake up time, I recognized that this 5 a.m. wake up time was needed for the time or chapter I was in when it was introduced to me. So I say that because it came into my life around February and March of 2023 when I kind of kicked things into high gears and really was really focused on leaving my job and finding a business. So the energy that I really was bringing into this practice was a way for me to ground myself and prepare myself to push through any fears or doubts or anxiety and recognize that I already did my routine, so I should feel good, cause and effect, black and white thinking. And I would push myself to the point where it became natural for the 5 a.m. wake ups. And it wasn't really until this fall of 2023 fall of 2024 when I recognized that it actually wasn't helpful. I recognized that there's a lot of urgency and dependency that I placed on this 5 a.m. wake up time in order to determine how productive I was during that day or how, a safety net. Like I did the grounding meditation practices, I journaled, I read a book, a few chapters of a book, and therefore I can take on the world, nothing can bother me. However, when something did bother me, I blamed myself, Maybe I could have done another breathwork exercise, or maybe I should have journaled more. And so, or maybe if I didn't wake up at 5 a.m. and I did a 6 a.m. wake up time, then it's my fault for sleeping in and I'm lazy. So that's kind of what I'm saying. Even our own practices or healing modalities that we've used at a certain time in our lives or chapters may require a revisit, right? And so what I really did this fall was kind of a clean slate. I just removed any kind of limitation, but also things that I had to do or felt like I had to do. My mornings, I really explored when it was natural for me to wake up. I found out that was 7 a.m. And then from there, I was really able to sit with all these practices and develop my own understanding and meaning to them as it relates to how they support me and my practice and my mindfulness and my energy in a way that is in flow and feels natural. And so, I kind of recognized that I actually preferred breath work over meditations. I do meditate. However, I think, putting a priority on my grounding practices were really important because I used to do them for 3 hours and I can't meditate for that long or do breath work in between that. And so I kind of understood okay, if I have expectations or if I have things that are on my to-do list in the morning, or if I'm thinking that I want to be creative in the morning, then what practices really will help me call in that energy? I found out that breath work is much more effective for me than a meditation. And I'm not shooting my meditations down. I still need them, trust and believe. But now a meditation isn't an hour long. I can't believe it. An hour long. Now the meditation's not an hour long. It's more 30 minutes, which is pretty big, And, the 3 different breath work types of exercises or pranayamas that I would do, I whittled that down to 1 maybe 2 after I shower and eat breakfast and start my day. So it was really nice to see how I could structure my morning in a way that's conducive to me and feels more freeing. And by doing that, I was able to really slow down and enjoy my soft mornings, is what I called it. So I would just lounge around in bed and I would visualize, imagine all the things that would make the day amazing. You know, if I got a invite to a friend to grab dinner, or if I got a really good email, or if I got good news, or my creative like post was, or like whatever I'm creating, I'm really excited to create, and you know, to create one of these lovely to create these lovely voice memos, voice journals, video journals. I don't know what to call this. Please call this something for me. So what I ended up doing after my morning was I really then focused on bringing delights. I love that word. Delights and joys into my life, like intentionally. I really will have to say that creating my mixes, and if you haven't followed me on SoundCloud, here's my SoundCloud. I'm really good at it, or at least I like to think I'm good at it. Or, you know, when I think about those mixes, it makes me really, really happy because when I create my mixes, I create them when I feel called to do them. And usually I get called to do them after a really shitty time, after, you know, a heartbreak, or after a fight with someone, or when I feel like things aren't working well, and I kind of ride the emotional wave of that feeling or that trigger. And as I'm writing it, I'm making sense of it, I'm journaling it, and creating these mixes are my form of transmutation, my form of alchemizing the pain that I have experienced, all the stories and beliefs and just like painful memories that come up as I'm riding this emotional wave and enduring it, and constantly reminding myself that I can do it, just to weather the storm. I'm able to then create something that brings me so much fucking joy. Like, when I make music, I am the most confident. Damn, why am I crying? I'm the most confident person that I am. And it really feels like it is something that no one can ever take away from me. And it is a beautiful practice to honor myself. And also I love to dance. And so, no more tears. And so when I create these mixes after a really difficult time, I'm then able to take those mixes and listen to them first thing in the morning to remind myself of who I am, because I am that fucking bitch. I'm sorry to all the kids listening, but I am that girl, and it reminds me of how fucking good I am at things. Oh, what was that? Anyways, it reminds me of how freaking talented I am. And it also does strengthen my intuition, because when I do mix, I don't listen to the song I'm bringing in, nor do I really know the songs that I'm bringing in. My process is every time I'm done with an experience, I create a new playlist. And maybe I create a new playlist, but now I'm thinking that maybe I like manifest this into my life. Let's put a pin on that. But I am able to create a playlist after that whole tower moment, and it is very interesting to hear the songs that populate that playlist, because they come when I'm creating something. And so when I'm creating something, I'd imagine that the energy that I'm in is the songs that I'm attracting and, you know, pulling up on my Spotify algorithm. And I save the ones that make me feel some type of way. And they're usually really good, but sometimes it's different energy. And when I then am at a point of, you know, a good amount of songs, I then kind of go on I kind of go and, well, I wouldn't say seek out, but I keep my ears perked for that first song that I really want to hear. When I'm able to then find that song, I'm able to kind of get a general theme of kind of what I imagine the set is going to feel and sound like. And so I would start with that first song that I discovered that sets the tone of the mix and also of my experience, and I just mix. And it is beautiful because I've gotten to a point in which now I am able to record in one sitting. I am able to feel more confident in how I mix in my songs, to the point where I'm more so focused on how I can convey a story, to the point now where I find it so enjoyable to look back at some of the titles of the songs and like just see the flow. And sometimes I look at it and I'm like, oh, like you're down bad, or oh, you're in a really good mood, or like, oh girl, you need to go out dancing, you need to have fun. They're all different vibes, and I love it because I number them. And every time I number them, I think about numerology because I love numerology. I'm not a math person, but numerology is very interesting to me. And, it is a slippery slope when you start looking for angel numbers. 111, 222, 333. Once I end, again, like when I'm finished with that and I have that number, and again, numerology, I'll put up the definition. But in this instance, I'm really able to just put the number to the general theme of what it is associated with. So 5, I think, is about personal freedom. And I'll put it up here because I don't really remember, and I'll post it on my Instagram. However, I have found that each one of these have really correlated with that numerology theme. I would say it is really funny that my first ever post did end at 111, and I didn't plan that. I didn't plan it. I promise you guys, I did it, and I said yes. And I haven't really gotten that before. But it's like these little things that, in my daily life that make me really excited. And that's because I sat with myself and I experimented and I explored. So that's why I think it's so important when we are imagining this next up level that we really explore. Because if we don't, we're going to tell ourselves that this is what we want, but it's really someone else's thing. Like, we compare ourselves so much to others, not in the sake of like what they do and the amount of money they have, but the lifestyle they live, how they operate and show up in the world. And it's really sad because you just look at some of these people who are just such kind-hearted humans who are so genuinely terrified of stepping outside of the mold because they're worried about retaliation, abandonment. They're fearful of what's next, what's on the other side. And in those moments, as I always said, or as I said earlier, it really does take a lot of balls to feel that fear and then tell yourself, okay, well, let's imagine a different life. Let's dream up something. Because that also then requires you to do more work. And I had to really sit with that. And that requires you to do more work, right? That requires you to really get clear with who it is you are and actually start developing a connection to living your life, to actually point blank living. Because I recognized how so much of my life I have been living for the future, for other people, for these expectations that I've randomly placed on myself, or maybe others did. And I was living in a state of trying to be perfect for everyone except for myself, because I deeply felt I was flawed, and in my idea, or, I felt deeply flawed in who I was, that I was never going to, I wouldn't say amount to anything, because I always thought I was going to amount to something, but I never thought that I would have this level of freedom to explore who I am and to love that person. Truly to love that person was the biggest shock to me, because I would see all of my mistakes, all of my shortcomings, my bloops as defining traits of my character, that this is who I am. I am a fuck up. I have to really, do much more work in order to get half of what other people get. Again, like, I even limited myself in my imagination. That was crazy. I would even try to play small in what it is that I want or in desire. And I will go on a whole thing talking about desires and pleasure and needs, because I think that's very important. We call awareness to that, because if you sell yourself short in the process of desiring or wanting something, baby, imagine you going through that process of then trying to get that thing, and how much more difficult it might be, or, how much more energy it requires. And what ends up happening is you get stuck, right? Sometimes people get stuck on the first step. Sometimes people burn out in the middle. And then sometimes they reach that point when they are 95% of the way there, and they give up and turn all the way back. I've been there. I've been at each spot. And that is why I think that the 5% is very necessary for our own growth, and really important for our future and what life we actually want to call in. Because when you're able to find joy in your life, whenever you're able to know that you can be in flow and not worry about missing deadlines or falling behind in life, you're really then able to engage with it in a very beautiful way that gets you to value the things that make you feel joyful in the present moment, and excited for how much more it can bring in joy for the future, and how much more you can up-level in that joy. So in that example, again, of thinking about my music, the way that I am envisioning my up-level is to start actually performing with people, or performing in crowds or with crowds. I think for a while it was really hard for me to release my attachment to my music. And the main reason, as I said, was because it's a deeply personal practice for me. And it was really nice to take that first step and to create these mixes and to share them on SoundCloud. Like, I felt like that was a very big hurdle and major step for me. And now I'm being asked, so what? Like, what's next? And I'm over here like, I don't know. You tell me. I don't know. But I then kind of, again, as I said, if I'm asked to understand what's next, I have to put myself in these different spaces to kind of feel it. So maybe this whole time that I've been avoiding performing in front of crowds might actually be really fun if I really just tried it. Or maybe, and personally, this is what I am envisioning, I want a radio show. But like, again, I don't know that I want a radio show until I try something. Maybe recording my sets and putting them on YouTube, or going live, or I don't know, maybe streaming it on Twitch. You know what I mean? There's a lot of possibilities. And so all this to say is, when it is time for you to be or start in your new chapter, not only do you have to release that 5% of whatever major cycle is being asked to be closed out and released, You also have to recognize that the 5% is your opportunity to understand what actual life you want to call it, what actual day-to-day flow or day-to-day schedule or feeling you want to have. And to also put yourself into places and into things that you may have not done in the past, but really leaning into the exploration of this dream life that you want, or exploration of what it is you want to call in and how it looks. Because when you explore, you can get a lot more clear, right? And if you get a lot more clear, the big man on top can send it in. I think, boom, manifestation. So, with that, I hope that you're able to feel comfortable turning to your imagination. I hope that you recognize that you deserve the world and playing small is no longer accepted here, and that you have a good fucking time every day. And how will you have that? By listening to my mixes, duh. Okay, sorry, shameless plug, but help your girl out because it would mean a lot. And with that, peace, love, and blessings as always, Manny.